everyone from the Melek'le Yemek channel. Today's recipe is a crispy, squeaky cheese made with homemade rennet that you won't find in most places, featuring a boiling method and black cumin seeds. I wish you all an enjoyable time watching. To make our cheese, I have 5 liters of raw cow's milk that I bought fresh. I used cow's milk, but you can use any type of milk you prefer: sheep, goat, cow, or buffalo, whichever is accessible to you. I'm not specifically choosing cow's milk, but rather using it because it's the one I can easily find. In this cheese recipe, we will use raw milk. We won't boil it, we will only heat it up to 36 degrees Celsius. However, if you are currently in a very cold winter season or your environment is particularly cold, you can heat it up to 38 degrees Celsius or even 40 degrees Celsius in extreme cases. Typically, we ferment our raw milk at temperatures between 32 degrees Celsius and 37 degrees Celsius. The milk will quickly reach 34 to 36 degrees Celsius when placed on the stove, so stay nearby and do not step away. The milk heats up to 36 degrees Celsius very quickly. We are only warming it, not boiling it. This is my homemade natural rennet recipe, and I have many different types on my channel, all of which are high quality and valuable. Now I'm using a little more than half a glass of rennet and adding it to my milk at 36 degrees Celsius. I mix it thoroughly, and since the weather is a bit cool, the milk sets in about 1.5 hours. If your homemade rennet is of higher quality and more effective, then even a quarter glass would be enough. However, in my case, under these conditions, I usually need a little more than 1 glass of rennet for 5 liters of milk. After 1.5 hours, I test the curd by inserting a knife, and as you can see, no milk sticks to it, meaning it has set perfectly. Now I can cut it and turn it into our black cumin cheese. Before cutting, I sprinkle about half a handful of black cumin seeds on top. If you are using more or less than 5 liters of milk, you can adjust the amount accordingly. If you are using store-bought rennet instead of homemade, then 1 teaspoon of rennet is enough for 5 liters of milk. Store-bought rennet is highly effective, so if you are using commercial rennet, the same rule applies: 1 teaspoon for 5 liters. Now I cut the cheese properly, mix it well with the black cumin, and let it sit for a bit. At this stage, the greenish whey from the cheese naturally starts to settle at the bottom. If you are using store-bought rennet to ferment 5 liters of milk, 1 teaspoon of rennet will be enough. Since commercial rennet is very effective, you use the same amount, 1 teaspoon per 5 liters of milk. If you are using homemade rennet, the quantity may vary, but for store-bought rennet, the measurement remains the same. Now I cut the curd thoroughly, mix in the black cumin seeds, and let it rest for a while. At this stage, the greenish whey naturally starts to sink to the bottom. The whey remains on top. Whether you call it green whey or yellow whey, they are essentially the same thing. This is what we refer to as whey, which is the liquid left after curdling. While my cheese rests, I prepare my straining bag. Initially, I used a thick one, but I later replaced it with a thinner one for better straining. Now I transfer all the curds into the straining bag, placing a bowl underneath to collect the whey. Of course, we don't throw away this whey. We boil it to extract the remaining curds, or cheese, and later use it instead of milk or water in soups and dough-based recipes. You can even make pancakes with it since it's neither too salty nor sweet, making it versatile for various dishes. Once the whey has drained, I pour it into a pot. The goal of this step is to ensure the cheese is well drained. For the first hour, I don't touch the cheese while it strains. If I interfere too soon, the curds inside might break down, resulting in cheese loss, so I let it drain naturally for the first hour. After that, I apply pressure to it. Since I noticed my initial straining cloth was too thick, I quickly replaced it with a thinner one for faster drainage. Around an hour later, I begin lightly pressing the cheese. After 1 hour, most of the whey has drained, but since I want the cheese to form a firm and well-structured block, I apply additional pressure and let it strain for another 3 hours. To ensure an even and flat shape, I place a tray on top and add 2 kilograms of weight. Once properly pressed, as you can see, it still releases some yellow whey. I collect this whey, pour it into another pot and boil it. Now it's time to remove the cheese from the cloth. After 3 hours under pressure, I take the cheese out of the cloth. This cheese is supposed to have small holes inside. To achieve this texture after draining, I wrap the cheese in its cloth and leave it on the balcony for a day. I let the cheese rest, or you can leave it in the warmest part of your house. As it rests, the inside of the cheese will reach a soft, melt-ready texture and develop that characteristic squeaky consistency. If you don't let it acidify properly at this stage, it won't have that squeaky texture after boiling. After a full day of resting on the balcony, the cheese starts developing holes. At this point, I soak it in warm water with salt to enhance its flavor. This cheese can be consumed immediately after making it, but for the best texture, it should rest for another day. If you don't see the holes forming right away, don't worry. It just means the temperature wasn't high enough. To continue the process, I coat the cheese in fine rock salt or fine sea salt. I use this dry salting method for all my cheeses, not just the ones with black cumin seeds. After salting, I wrap the cheese tightly in plastic wrap and leave it in the pantry for another day. During this time, any remaining yellow whey will be expelled, ensuring there's no excess moisture left inside the cheese. Once the cheese is salted, it stops acidifying. Any acidity it developed beforehand will remain, but no further acidification will occur. After 1 day, I noticed that nearly half a cup of yellow whey has been released from the cheese. To demonstrate, I collected it in a glass. You can see how much liquid is expelled after dry salting. Now that the dry salting step is complete, the cheese is ready for boiling. This boiling process is the same method used for Malatya cheese, halloumi cheese, Maraş sıkma cheese, and Antep cheese. The only difference is that I don't add black cumin seeds for some of these variations, but the rest of the steps are identical. I place the cheese into boiling water, cooking it in batches. For each batch, I let the cheese boil for about 5 to 6 minutes before removing it. I repeat this same process for each batch to ensure even cooking. After the cheese has acidified and been boiled, congratulations, you've got yourself kaşar cheese or mozzarella. Now to remove any remaining liquid inside, I press the cheese firmly. Some pieces I squeeze like a meatball, while others I press between my hands. This step must be done while the cheese is still hot, so that the moisture and trapped air escape properly. That's why I work quickly, even though my hands feel a little burnt at first. But after a moment, my skin adjusts and I continue pressing without any discomfort. Once all the pieces have been thoroughly squeezed, there's no need for additional salting or brining. Simply store them in an airtight container to prevent air exposure and they're ready to eat. You can enjoy this cheese immediately. It doesn't need any extra waiting time. Now I'll show you how it looks after cutting into it. As you can see, I didn't wait at all. I boiled the cheese, let it cool slightly, and sliced it right away. Some pieces even still have a bit of steam inside, but since I wanted to wrap up the video, I decided to show you the final result now. Look at that. Perfectly made, delicious cheese. The entire process takes a maximum of 3 days. 1 day for making the cheese, 1 day for developing holes and acidifying, 1 day for dry salting. After that, you simply boil it and it's ready to eat. If you pair this cheese with fresh greens and tea, it's perfect for breakfast, lunch, or even dinner. If you love traditional or regional style cheeses, you absolutely must try this recipe. Thank you for watching. I'll see you in the next recipe. Until then, take care and goodbye.